Stopping the Violence in America. As I always say, that we have been here for several weeks discussing and listening and hearing from experts who have dedicated their lives in different areas, from politicians and leaders, Christian leaders, religious leaders, faith leaders, advocates, and just a whole host of different variety of people who have come on to share with us their hopes, their strengths, the avenues that they have taken to reduce violence, from post-violence or even prevention. So we are happy to have a new guest, and I've heard so much about him, and now I'm looking forward to hearing from him. And his name is, he's retired Brigadier General Arnold N. Gordon-Bray. Let me just tell you about him and his background. Brigadier General Arnold N. Gordon-Bray, a retired U.S. Army veteran with over 3 decades of service, is dedicated to curbing crime and violence in America. As the owner of the ANGB Consulting LLC and a consultant for Threat Emulations, he leverages his extensive leadership experience in strategic communication and combat operations to address issues of national interest. Passionate about transforming outcomes for underdeserved, underrepresented, undervalued, disenfranchised communities, Gordon-Bray actively engaged with a nonprofit organization like 320 Cradle and Careers, focusing on STEM education and innovation networks. His military background includes commanding forces in Iraq and contributing to the AFRICOM operations, uniquely positioned him to advise on strategic, operational, and humanitarian concerns. With a wealth of experience in modernization and experimentation, Gordon-Bray is committed to enhancing communities' safety and promoting diversity, veterans' needs, and education across the nation. And I like his topic. We're going to discuss the underserved, underrepresented, undervalued, and the disenfranchised. It's a great pleasure to finally have you on. Our dear sister Catherine Duncan, on several occasions, has almost put me in a chokehold. She said, "You have to get, you have to get him here." And so we finally got you here. So welcome. We look forward to hearing your story and some excellent pertinent points from you, and then we can have open discussion. Welcome, General.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and I appreciate it, Reverend. It's great to be here. You know, I'm not sure I volunteer. I get voluntold by Catherine to be places, and after spending a little time talking to Nadia yesterday, I came to the conclusion that this is probably something that's worth sharing. I'm going to ask all y'all to, first of all, forgive me. I've not been involved in a violent accident, so this is not my normal eyewear. But the topic is so important that while I recover from having to deal with the shingle stuff, I figured I would just do it and get through it. Because what we're going to talk about is important, and if I can reach or touch somebody, or more importantly, some group of peoples, then I should do this. I am, as was spelled out, I am Arnold Gordon-Bray, and I'm from a small town in called Columbia, South Carolina. I guess it's a small city, and I, like many of us, came from a not a well-to-do home, but I had a well-visioned mother who at 42 years old with 6 children and decided that she had to go back to school. And I lived in a place where to see violence routinely was not uncommon until she changed the environment and changed the structure. And we'll get to one of the key points that made it work for me, work for us. But it's about having somebody in the home that's committed to better, and then surrounding yourself with people who are committed to better. I mean, and we'll talk more about that. You've heard my military bio. My military bio tells you I spent 3 decades. I'm an infantry airborne ranger. And most people would say, well, heck, you live in violence. That's what you do, that you break things and kill people. That's probably the shallowest of reasons to listen to me, because that's not the ultimate goal of what I do. First of all, as a soldier and as an infantry airborne ranger, I'm principled. I support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I listen to those words again. I support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I would bear true faith and allegiance to those same. More importantly, I was asked to do those things within the office that I represented. And the office that I represent now is that of a citizen that people recognize having some levels of experience, that I should step forward and assist when possible. And I do that on whatever platform, whatever space is available. I've obviously targeted my efforts and my energies to the nation's least served, because I'm a firm believer that a rising tide raises all ships. A rising tide raises all ships. So you have to go, as a leader, I would always go to the place of the greatest conflict to see, or the greatest potential for change, to see where I might position myself for the outcome that I've designed. If my outcome is to change this nation, we don't go to the place where everybody's been successful. You can go there to get lessons, but that's not where you go for the fixes. So you have to go to the place that you have to fix, and then you have to see and observe, because our nation is not a one size fits all. And sometimes we've made it so simple, we'll say it's racial or it's ethnic. Neither of those definitions fit well anymore. I ask all of you, if you haven't done the 23andMe or the Ancestry.com, do it. I promise you, if you have a racial or ethnic issue, you will end up hating part of yourself if you aren't careful. Part of who you are. Some ancestor that if they were in the room with you, you'd be embracing them, but you can't do it. So I've created a more appropriate term, and I call it U3D: underserved, underrepresented, undervalued, and disenfranchised. It has a mostly Black or brown tint to it. And I won't go very deep into this piece, but let's be fair. There was 400 years of chattel slavery that affected the African American. There was the ethnicity of the aristocracy of the Europeans who carried that over with their wealth and then bought and then empowered themselves in this country and indeed around the world. And that fraternity of dollars continues to exist. But it has been infiltrated by people of all colors. And there's still a tiering of people that are around the world that you have to acknowledge. So the U3D looks at communities. It looks at a community. The communities have the culture of African American, of brown people from the different parts of the world. But you have to kind of understand that, and you say, okay, so there's some disenfranchisement going on, but that's been over 100 years since the 13th Amendment. And by the way, just as a sidebar, anybody that likes to point to Juneteenth, just remember Juneteenth was only the fruition of the Emancipation Proclamation, meaning it was a executive order that still left 250 thousand slaves still enslaved in the states of Kentucky, Maryland, West Virginia, and Delaware until December 6th. So the 13th Amendment changed that. Well, it didn't. You know, as I look at you and listen to people, you got to understand, as an 11-year-old, I drank from separate water fountains. And with that came a mindset that I did not understand or didn't know, because I just did what was required of me at that time. And then I'm old enough to have watched the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I'm 9 years old at that time. So I felt and understood those impacts at a more than child level. So I recognize what the communities look like. And so anyone that starts to say that, well, we should be able to get over it. No, you have to do those things. You have to acknowledge that it's there first, and then you have to start moving out from it. And I was blessed with a mother that in 1962, with 6 children, she decided to go to college and get her degree and start to look very, very differently at the world, because all of a sudden opportunities opened up. And with the remarry to a young sergeant, I got a chance to see another side of the world I hadn't. So part of my commitment goes to exposure. The fact that I was able to rise to the rank of Brigadier General is because of that change in view, that change of expectations that my mother put on me. And if you don't have that in your house, if you don't have that person who's willing to say, I'm not going to stay where we are, I'm not going to mentally stay where we are, I'm not going to physically stay where we are, I'm not going to view myself in that same vein, you are subject to it. And oh, by the way, even when you aren't subject to it, you have to recognize that some of that exists. And that's part of what does that. The other part I talked about is I'm a soldier. And people say, well, that's counterintuitive. As a soldier, you're about violence. Well, that's not true. See, soldiers, especially as you rise in the rank, the reason why you prepare and train so hard, it goes to Sun Tzu. He says, basically, I don't want to fight, because when I fight, I get hurt, I get bruised, I get beat up too. Even if I win, I get beat up. So I train and train very hard so that if you see me train, you know, my kata that I do, as it says in karate, if I show you that I have the potential, I hope you and I don't have to fight. I'm prepared, but I don't have to fight. At a macro level, we call it deterrence, but that's not a mission. So you have to be very capable. In strategic terms, it's called diplomacy. Do those things that you can to prevent fighting. Informational, talk. Make sure that you understand what it is and why it is that you have this idea of hate. Use the tools that you can so that you can telegraph your intent not to be a butthole, not to be aggressive, not to damage, not to hurt. And then I fall back to, again, I'm a military. So I have the capability. I prepare with the capability to do something. In our communities, that has to be that third source, which is our community control element, whatever that looks like in the community that you're in. It is not a heavy-handed police. It is a prepared police, physically, mentally, psychologically, and engaged. And then the last piece of it, by the way, if you haven't listened, is diplomatic, informational, military, and economic means. The last one is the economics. People in our communities are usually haves and have less. Very few places have not. They have less. A judge friend of mine told me, said, most people that steal, they don't care about you because they have little respect for you or life. And there's a belief that if you steal, you'll kill. And I've spent a lot of time trying to analyze that, but the economic means is that when there's a disparity, and people can't see a way ahead to achieve what you have because they feel like it's blocked, that creates animosity. In the military, that's another tool of diplomacy. That's another tool that allows us to create friends or create enemies. These are part of the tools of mindset that I bring to every discussion, whether it's strategic and trying to fight another nation or whether it's coming to the neighborhood and talking to some people. Because those tools that have my ultimate goal in everything is never to fight. Only rookies and politicians who are trying to pretend to be tough want to fight because they don't understand the cost. I carry with me every day the reminder of 154 soldiers who served under me in combat and were wounded, or the 3 soldiers, Gavin Neighbors, Mike Dool, and Jacob Butler, who died under my command, or the countless others that I saw, touched, and watched them die in my arms, not necessarily mine. So life is not cheapened with me. So when I talk about this changed hue, that the people in these communities that we go into where there's violence that's created by one, the haves and have less, the disparity in injustice that exists, those tools become part of my means to change. Kat Duncan, her big deal is that she likes this thing that we created called the Envision Centers. Inside of every community, one of the things we look for is trying to make sure that there's a system that helps focus in trying to change the lives of the communities so that the end goal is that the community is changed. The parents, the role models that may have been to jail with anti-recidivism efforts to get them back to being real role models that are positive. Being in a community so that in the Envision Center, we're trying to focus on character and leader development. We're trying to focus on making sure that we have an education system that is appropriately prepared to advance children in understanding science, technology, engineering, and math and arts for innovation and thought. But it prepares them for the jobs that are not going to be there or changed or not even invented yet because they've learned how to think. We're talking about making sure that we evaluate our children on a routine basis to find out who's been affected by the PTSD that's caused by the streets or the physical challenges of nutrition, et cetera, that prevent them from learning and keep them from being mislabeled. And they understand the economics that will lead to financial literacy and wealth building so that those who are now of this new generation or the last 2 generations that really have had a chance for change understand how to do wealth building. And then more importantly, to spend time at those places, locations, government, and private industry, making them understand how they can help change the trajectory of people and communities. We say stop the violence. Violence is everywhere. And as I said, and it happens in every hue. Unfortunately, we've also done some things in this world that also make that trajectory more difficult for some than others. Internally, we still have an element of self-hate. It is based upon pattern analysis, our own prejudices that have been created over the time. It does not necessarily allow us to grade people individually. But if we're ever going to change, you better do that first. We still grade them based upon the perceptions of who they are, based on ethnicity, hue, etc. We've got to change that. I have some thoughts, but the top of the list of the things of the ways to change, and Reverend, is very appropriate that you're here. There are four pieces, or actually 5 pieces of health. It is physical. And physical has flexibility, endurance, and strength. It is sleep, diet, and then there is spirituality. People have to believe that there is someone more powerful than they are, greater than they are. I don't care who it is. Mine happens to be Jesus the Christ, or actually Yeshua, because as a person who understands science, I have the advantage that I surrender myself when I get to a point that I can't understand it, because I believe there's someone who understands that. But someone has to have that place, that space that holds you accountable for your very existence and soul. And if you can't get there, then you better have a person, someone that matters to you more than you matter to you. And you can put whatever label you want on that. I give a talk sometime about the 5 wells, and there's and I'll give the 5 wells very briefly, but that's a whole nother pitch. But it's making sure that the person reads well, that you speak well, that you dress appropriately, and that you understand there's a difference. So be well traveled mentally, or use the internet, and then the other one's friends well chosen. That last one is the one where you get to see yourself, and you find somebody that reflects on you, somebody that you want to make be better than you, or at least be the best version of themselves that they can be, and someone who sees you in that same vein. That's what we have to get to. Inside of our communities, we have got to spend some time. And, I'm not going to try to get fluffy or real fluffy on this, but we really have to start to emphasize the value of a family. I don't care whether it's a stepmom, stepdad. My stepdad's the reason why my last name is Bray, not just Gordon, but Bray, because I can't disown my real father, who was Gordon, because he did not unlove me. He just loved me in a different way, and I was helped to create a better version of me by Sergeant First Class Bray, because he stepped in with ideas and tools of discipline and a way of love. And the people that were around him, with him, embraced and brought me into that community. And by the way, because it's military, you can suspect that they were of all hues. That had not been my pathway per se, other than a scoutmaster that happened to be British earlier on, but he did not know black people. As a matter of fact, we went to a beach as a scout troop, and I took my shirt off, and his eyes got big. He says, "Blimey." And I said, what is it? He thought that like an ape, my belly would look like my hands. But he did it from a place of ignorance in the truest sense of the word, and became profusely apologetic for how he responded. But that's okay, because I learned from that. That was additive to who I am. And it let me know that there's space that people have to be in, that you got to give them the chance to grow to, as opposed to react with anger or violence. That's what our communities have to do. And again, I guess I lied. I told you I wasn't going to talk that long on the front end, but I want to at least map those pieces for you. I want to map those pieces for you so you could kind of get a better insight into me and my thought processes that will hopefully drive some of the questions. So with that said, Dr. Oliver, I apologize for rambling a little bit more than I had planned. But I hope it sets a stage for understanding a little bit more of me and the source of the responses.
No, General, you honored it. And it was kind of role that joy listening to. I just wanted to go back as you gave us a litany of processes as it looks at the world of violence, even from your military background, and you made it very clear that that is a certain type of violence. It's nothing that is it's not your premeditative heart to go out and kill somebody, but it was something that you had to do in defense of the nation and defense of others. So that was very clear. But I thought of two things in the topic, because the topic is, you really discuss, and as you alluded to, and the underserved, the underrepresented, the undervalued, and disenfranchised. So even when I started this webinar, working on this webinar, I always say that what I found is a lack of love. Anyone is void, and I'm glad that's why you brought family. Any void person or people, whoever, are devoid of love, you do see some negative after effects. You see things to come out. So I wanted to just discuss that and open up to other brothers and sisters. But one of the other things that I thought about as you spoke was the undervalued and Frankie Valli. I think did you give that analogy here? But anyway, Frankie, which is a critical point that you made. I was with a team of psychologists, and they were evaluating, I don't want to make a racial, but anyway, they were evaluating one kid who was from an at-risk community, and then one kid who was at a more affluent community or whatever. So both kids had the same outbursts, and I think both of the kids had committed a very similar crime. And it was not violent, but it was enough for them to be in the institution they were in and had to be reevaluated for some anger management. So when the team of psychologists came out, they said, with the final analysis of both boys, they said, well, Tyrone, which is at the at-risk community, was hostile. And the one who was not at the at-risk community was expressing himself. So I thought about that in some of the things that you were saying. And also, so what that goes back is, who are undervalued. Everybody likes to be valued. Even as you had indicated about your dad, you gave him a platform, even though he wasn't there, but you gave him a platform because you and yourself were valuing who he is as a human being who was your biological dad, right? So you gave him. So everybody deserves that value. Everybody doesn't get that value. So what my conclusion is, many times that leads to unbridled violent behavior, correct? So I just want to throw that out to you, and as we open up the door for others to say, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, let me do this real quick. There's a couple things. One is that I'm gonna give you a classic example. I lived on Newport, Rhode Island, as a professor at the Naval War College. And one day I'm coming home from work, and I see this guy holding, not of color, holding with his hand on my son's shoulder, and he had decided it was his right to counsel him. So I came over and see, having engaged with all the kids before, I knew the kids. He hadn't been out there. And so they were playing cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers. I can't remember what it was, but he had his hand. I said, sir, before I let you know I'm an airborne ranger, I said, I steeled myself. I had to. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, he's playing with these guns with these other little kids, and he's just and I said, let me help you before you get your foot too far up your mouth, up your butt too. I said, because here's the problem. I said, you've got a problem. I said, because my son's a little black child. And he said, and that's what I talked about, the biases that we all have. And that's what he had in his mind. So then I said, you notice you said he was with these other little kids. I said, did you know he's the youngest person out here? He said, huh? He said, how old is he? I said, your son's 10. My son's 9. That little boy over there is 10. And that one's 10. I said, so what you've done is you just scarred him, and I've got to try to fix it. And I said, I'm going to tell you something you should never do. Put your hands on somebody else's child. And I was furious. But you have to steel yourself. There are 3 role models that run through my head all the time. All the time. Mandela, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. They stay in my space. See, and each of them has this, because King always lived on the idea of hope and better. Malcolm X looked for hope and better, but he was always in that space where there was an element of by any means necessary. But he was not there as he matured. And then Mandela, because he was willing to forgive from this. See, some of us still live in gang mindset. When it becomes our time, I'm going to take turf. We have to get past that. And it takes us as the adults to not go where we want to go sometimes, and try to look for a way out to resolve and to demonstrate. And then in those communities, that's an individual, but it also has to be a community effect. And I'll use the Frankie Valli example. And those who weren't on the net, if you ever seen the show, the Jersey Boys, if you ever notice, 3 of them, they sit in jail every time, because they've been labeled as the bad boys. But every time Frankie's with them, even driving the car, even getting in trouble, he has a clean record because he's Frankie. His mom and dad were in the game of trying to change the image of who they were. And so what happens is he was getting parental passes without knowing it. Because that's why the family has to be involved. And if you ever noticed, those parents that go to school, go to those PTA meetings, that step up when the teachers comments about what's going on and they head off at the pass, the child has a tendency to do better academically and ultimately in most other things. And rarely, if there's no involvement, does he get a break or she get a break. But that's a collective community affair, whereby the people that we have on our streets doing our policing, what happened in St. Louis, the policemen didn't even live in the city. They were from another place. They came in to police up people they didn't know and respond to people they didn't know. There was no relationship. One of the things I would do, I would actually, if somebody wanted to be a police of mine, and I was a political person, you'd have to live in that area. You couldn't live more than a mile away from the edge of whatever area that you're in, maybe 5 miles on the outside. But really, you should be in the, because that's where that community, that's where that familial feeling has to be. That's probably longer than you asked for, but that's thoughts.
I appreciate it. Great, thank you. Let me open up to some questions or some statements someone would like to make. I think I'll call on someone. I don't see a hand, so I'm gonna call on Jim Edgerly. He's a man here.
Thank you, Reverend Oliver. I didn't expect to have to say anything at this meeting, but I will say a few things. Reverend Oliver, I have such a hard time with these Zoom meetings getting bored and staying invested, but not today. I really, really found these comments rich. First of all, I guess what you're telling us, Arnold, is that you give your mother credit. Am I right? For your, let's call it your sense of being held accountable and your sense of your responsibility. You give your mother credit for that. Am I right?
I give her all credit.
God bless your mother. Think how many people she's helped through you. I'm so inspired by that little testimony. Also by your explanation about what is spirituality. And you explained it very simply about the importance of being in some way accountable to someone, something higher than you. I find that very practical, sage way to understand the importance of, let's call it conservative spirituality, your sense that we all need to be put our head down and report, to be accountable, that there's a higher authority. And if you go through life without that sense, you're going to make the worst, horrible mistakes because of all the crap that we have within us. So I thank you for that insight that for me is quite precious. And I thank you for this wisdom that I didn't, instead of being bored, I really inherited something from this meeting, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, James.
Abraham Lincoln used to say, I found myself on my knees when I had no place else to go. Today, I call it knee mail. Everybody needs to send some knee mails out.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, James, for your comments always. They are also very rich as well. Actually, General, he does a lot of history, writing on the Black history and American history as it relates to Black and white unity, and he's done a stalwart job, and some of the things and some points that he has. Right. One day you have to go on his program is called
Higher Purpose Forum.
Higher Purpose Forum. So
if I was able to explain anything, it's because of the coaching I got from Reverend Oliver.
So it's great to have him here. That's why I pointed him out. Thank you, James. How about Bruce?
Thank you, sir. General, thank you for your presentation. One other thing Abraham Lincoln said was that he owed everything to his stepmother. I guess he didn't have a very good relationship with his father. He didn't even go to his funeral, but and there's so many people in history like that just give all. And in fact, I heard one time a statement that everybody wants to marry their mother. And that's a difficult statement to make in this day and age. But what they meant was the mother is the central point of love. Your dad gets up. If you got a good dad, he's still going to go to work every day. And my dad worked Tuesday nights and Saturdays. But my mom was there at lunch when I came home every day. So, but what I want to say is, General, I taught in the inner city of Chicago, and I had 30 kids in my class, and one of the 30 had both birth parents at home. And I went to Chicago Public School. We had up to 44 kids in a class, but I would say we had 88 parents waiting for us at home and making sure if we wanted to play baseball after dinner, we had done all of our homework. And I'm a pretty smart guy. So they tell me, but I don't have the foggiest idea of how to change the situation of single parent families. Again, I'm in Chicago. I grew up there. And I see, the problems of the gangs and now we have this smash and grab thing going on every day. And I don't have to elaborate, everything. I'm sure it's true of every major city in America, but I have no idea what to do about it. So I'm interested to hear any comments you might make.
Your
I
speaker
don't
is
hear
out.
anything. Doesn't look like he's muted, but I don't hear anything. I was all excited to get an answer.
Yeah.
You and me both. So, okay.
Still
I
can't
don't
hear you,
know.
General.
Something went out for a minute.
Well, let's open the floor to anybody that wants to answer that.
Let's see what he's saying.
Too bad he doesn't have captions.
So I'm Catherine Duncan. I'd like to perhaps weigh in. Somehow we've lost General Gray. And if you can hear me, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I believe what General Ray, one of the points he made was that the people who are closest to the situation, the people that are having the challenges, are the ones who are in the best space to come up with the fixes. And so instead of us saying, what can I do to fix it? You might ask, what can I do to help the people that are in the situation to help them fix themselves? So I see it as a self-reparations, where reparation starts with ourselves and fixing ourselves with outside support instead of having outside people coming in saying how they're going to fix people in the underserved, underrepresented, and undeveloped communities. We have ideas about what it would take to change our situations, but very rarely do we have a voice to be able to present our visions for how to change our environment. And we often say that it's the changing the person's environment is what most impacts their outcomes. An example of that would be a child who lives in an environment where he has a violin, a microscope, and a telescope will have different outcomes than if his environment has a hammer, a saw, and a gun. So the question then is, how do we help people in the inner city change our environment? And General Bray spoke of the Envision Centers, and that's one of the key components of the Envision Center. It allows people in the inner city to come into the STEM centers and learn.
Can you hear me now?
Environment. Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you, General Bray,
Okay.
for coming in right there.
First of all, I heard all of you all talking, so I think I can chime in here real quick. Catherine, you're mostly right, because it is in fact It is, in fact, one of those things that no one outside of the community can fix it. They can provide options. But it has to be a first of all, a communication with those in the community, because there's a strong belief between the haves and have-lesses that many of them still are carrying what I call secondhand hate or secondhand oppression. I heard one of the most conscious comments come from Snoop Dogg about 4 years ago. He said, "I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of because everybody is telling them how bad they've got." And of course, he's looking around himself and see how much he has, even though he talks the street that he came from, how much he has. So he's trying to elevate. He took his family out of that environment. And then you have the kids who seem to want to fight to be back in that environment. They want to be thugs because it has an element of cool in their mind until it becomes real. The thing that hurt me the most in George Floyd, who did he call for while he was on his face dying? He called for his mother. To your point, sir, he called for his mother. That embrace, that ultimate feeling of family is what they want, what all of us want. Maslow's theories of needs have not disappeared. The challenge we have right now is trying to acknowledge it, find it, and then try to meet those needs for our kids. Now, and to be fair, we're not going to get them all because they are individual spirits and souls. And I talked about those wells. Those friends well chosen, those friends outside will have a tremendous effect on them. A tremendous effect. I live with that on a personal basis daily, and I'm going to be very sharing here. I have one child who went to college on her own, found out where she wanted to go, stayed for 4 years, got in, went to Carnegie Mellon. Another who's smarter, absolutely smarter, but found other friends and decided that he had a better way and struggles with that piece. The thing that keeps him centered is he still knows that there's a God. There's still something greater than him. And so what we really can do from a community perspective is provide opportunities for our young people to have, create communities that have a sense of balance and people who are both part of private industry and part of the public policy that recognizes with as close to a blind eye as possible the sensitivities of those communities. Which ones don't have the requisite number of parents and oh, by the way, with people who are willing to step up and do some of the things that parents can do. That's why people forget the anomalies that are out there, and unfortunately, too many point to the anomalies as being okay. The examples that everyone can do it. It's not a true statement. It's not a true statement. You got to find out, to your point, you got to find out what they need. There needs to be a place for constant communications for our children. A place, even for the ones who don't necessarily want to talk. Sometimes they just need to have somebody that they can go to. And that 88 number that you had for your kids that had in your community, that's wonderful. But I will tell you, even in that 88, you know the one or two that still did something wrong and still went the other way out of those percentages. But it reduced itself because
I
they
think
had somebody. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
no, you're correct. So I think that you're correct in that area. It's I want to go to just before, and I want you to continue, but before we leave Vescola Grant, she had her hand up. I'd like her to answer a question, and then Leslie Rigney.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so and I didn't thank you. Thank you for the forum, and thank you for I'm grateful for Sister Donna Abey who invited me. I got tons of notes here because the more you all spoke, the more things came with me, and I'm gonna try to not take up all the time and let you get back to one of the things that I want to say that is going to explain a lot from my perspective is I heard a while back from a very good spiritual friend of mine, and she said, we act the way we act because we think the way we think. And we think the way we think because we believe what we believe. One of the good examples of this is the story of the man who thought that your hands would be, your belly would be the same color as your hands. People behave the way they behave, and I've learned how to give grace based on, I think people are doing the best they can, good or bad, good choices or bad choices, based on where they are mentally, where they are financially, where they are emotionally, where they are intellectually. And so if we are going to change the lives of young people or anybody, we're going to have to change what they think. I think we are misrepresented, we're underserved and disenfranchised and all of that because we are misrepresentative children. These folks that we're talking, misrepresented, they're misunderstood, and they're misguided. We give them labels because we don't understand where they come from, what decisions they're making. Some of these guys are out there on the streets because they have parents at home who don't have enough money to feed their young siblings, or who don't have money for their own medication, and in their minds, the world is not doing anything for us, so I got to get out and do it myself. So they behave the way they behave based on the situation they're in. So if we're going to change something, then we have to change what they believe so they can change the way they behave. We talked about love, and then we went right past it, because we don't really understand the power of love. And yes, a mother's love has such power, but for those whose mother is strung out and don't know how to love, those whose mothers are working, so they're not at home, and they're not able to show love the way a child thinks that love will be received, so they can understand that love. That's where we all come in. The Bible says that we love, it's the second greatest command. We love the Lord, and then we love our neighbor as ourselves. And so we have to show them the love of God. Yes, they need spiritual guidance. They need to know that there is a higher power, but they need to be able to know the love of us who are here. How can you say you love God who you've never seen, but you don't love your brother or your sister who you see all the time, who you walk past all the time? They don't want help. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe any of these children want to be thugs. I don't believe they want to be thugs. I believe that they feel like that's the thing for them because of the situation they're in, because they believe what they believe, because their limited level of intellect, and because what history has told them about themselves puts them in that place. Two more things really quickly. The statement is we won't get to them all. Maybe not, but our goal has to be to get them all one by one, because we get one and we get that one to help us get the next one, and that one to help us get the next one. Snoop Dogg may have said that he was tired of being tired, but Fannie Lou Hamer said, hallelujah, years ago, she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So we are experiencing sickness because we are disenfranchised with health benefits, and because we are malnourished because of food insecurities. All of those play a part, and so we have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired of seeing our brothers and sisters sick and tired. I could go more, but that's I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Amen.
General, you say anything? We're coming to the close. I would like Leslie Rigney to come on, and then I'll allow you to make some final summations. Leslie, to make it short.
Okay, yeah, that was quite a passionate talk from Miss Grant. I really appreciate that. In answer to Bruce Suture's question, I wonder about the laws. I kind of came on here a little bit late, but I worked as an OB nurse most of my life, and I had my patients would say they couldn't, the baby's father couldn't live with them because of the age of dependent children would cut them off. So I wonder how laws could be changed to make it more family friendly, and to encourage the situation for the men to come into the family. And also the whole thing with child support. There's a lot of things that can be done to make it easier for families to really stay together. That could be something that could be done. What do you think?
Go ahead.
General Bray, what do you think about that? You must have studied that part.
I did. I gather I'm doing a wrap up at the same time. I'm gonna try to. First of all, I do believe that there's some help out there, and I think this is where those of us who are conscious, we've got to put leaders in position who have issues, real issues of family, on their agenda. And I say that because there are fake issues of family. A nun told me, said it best, most people who scream about anti-abortion are really pro-birth, and they don't care about the child after it's delivered. We have to be about holistic life from the moment, and we got to recognize, even in a prophylaxis way, that we've got young men and women who are exposed to much more than we were exposed to coming up. They can see it all, and yes, they respond. So we've got to put the family in perspective. And now I'll go back to, I'm gonna tight as I can. Jesus gave us, in my faith, 2 commandments. He rolled them up into 2. He said, first of all, love him above all things, and then secondly, the second part was, I really believe it on my heart, to love one another as we love ourselves, because he, like he always did, he was teaching. Since we really don't know what love is undefined. If you start to look at yourself realistically, be honest about it, you will do those things that you really want to have done. If you treat people that way, you'll finally get to understand that piece. And so when we start looking at these communities that we're in and start to recognize who your neighbors are, and let your children see how you treat others that you don't know, they learn from that. I'm a 100 black man. We also say what they see is what they'll be. And so our personal examples also change who we are. And this idea of community and family, it has to be broader than just in your household, because in some cases it has to be broader because there's somebody that you know who doesn't have a household. I talked about my mother and how much I love her and the example she gave. She can't do it now in today's day and age, but she brought kids home from school after she got her degree in some of the places whereby they'd be hungry or wouldn't do something. She'd bring them home with her to school, and they stayed with us for several days.
You're muted, General. Yeah, you're muted again. We can't hear you. Say something. I don't know. It goes out like that's a shame.
I think something came to his phone and then it cut off his, sorry.
It was somebody try to call in or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when somebody tries to call in.
He'll probably be back.
You know, in our church, we just say Satan.
Ah!
We want him to talk.
Some of us do.
I think what happens is every day we have a prayer call for nonviolence at this hour, and it automatically dials everyone's number who participates.
Right.
So that's because I got the same call, but I took it on a different phone.
He's back anyway.
Okay.
Well, anyhow, once again, I heard all of you all, but so again, love is central, and it starts with us, but we have to always make sure that we're doing our part with our political pieces, and as stated earlier, it's about opportunities and giving our kids opportunities to do better, putting people in place so that they can be embraced. You know, I hope I didn't misinform you when I mentioned Snoop. His comment was he was sick of people continuing to hammer home how bad they're feeling, as opposed to talking about how to move forward. Because that's the space we've got to kind of be in. We've got to figure out how to move forward. We got to figure out how to, and I say figure out, we've got to make those opportunities for people to step forward. You've got folks like Dre and some others who are going into the universities, but we've got to be in the communities and reach in. That's why the Envision Centers work. We've got to give the kids that space, and then the adults, the centers of influence that are in those communities, we've got to make sure that they're stepping up. They're stepping up. We've got to help them do better. And that's why the anti-recidivism is so important, because many of the people that the kids look up to have a blotch on their records, and they may be exceptionally talented. We've got to figure out how to help in those spaces. But that's, again, and we've got to figure out what that. You said a friend of mine, I spoke of him early. He's a magistrate judge. He says character is hard to fix, but most people in jail are not really in jail because of character. I'll stop there and I'll leave it alone. And Reverend Oliver, I just thank you for giving me opportunity to share my thoughts. And I'll extend myself to anybody who has a follow-up question that wants to ask with greater detail something that I said, or ask me or refute something that I've said. I don't mind, because I still personally have an unabiding faith in who we are and who we posture ourselves as a nation. So we'll go there.
And let me just say, I did not misinterpret what you said. I just thought it was a great opportunity to go back to Fannie Lou Hamer, just knowing all she did because she was sick and tired. And so Snoop being sick of hearing what he was hearing, it all amounts to being tired of seeing things the way they are, and wanting to do something change things. So no,
Yes.
I didn't get it wrong. I did not disagree with it. I think you change people spirit, especially if we're talking spiritually. You tell these children that what the world says about them is the lie. What the Bible says about them is truth, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And it's not corny to tell them that. It is our obligation to tell them who they are until they have the audacity to believe that that is who they are, and then they change, the courage and the faith to change the way they behave based on who they are.
Amen.
All the great comments that were made today. It was a very innovative discussion, and intriguing discussion. Just in conclusion, I want to thank you, General Gray, and I think that just something you had said in the beginning, you had talked about history, and I think we need to, there's a root cause of everything. And if you go throughout history, you begin to see when there is a trail of lack of love, then there is a compilation, if you will, of enculturation in a negative way. And this is what you get. So I think we don't go to history a little bit more succinctly to connect it with ill behaviors that we do see. And so that's what you began off with, you know, the separate water fountains and all those things that you just took for granted. But actually they have contributed to the ill behaviors. And that can answer our brother's question that he asked, Bruce Suture, why you're looking at a whole long litany of situations that that contributes to some ill behaviors, and it becomes the people, if you will. So we have to begin, as you had said, and our sister Grant had said, and many others have said, how do we reverse that process? And it's not only our community, because it wasn't our community that contribute to it. So the outer community has also onus as well to help with the healing process of the dysfunction. God bless everyone. I want to thank you so much. Everyone asked some wonderful questions. I want to thank Jim. He said something to you. Jim, it's always good to see you. Mrs. Grant, you're a very powerful speaker and some very powerful points. Everyone who shared with us, thank you, Leslie. And also, again, thank you, General Gray. You did an excellent job. You stirred up our juices in this meeting, and to be continued. We look forward to you coming back. Part two. Why don't we do a part two? And I want to thank everyone here in my last couple of days here in Africa, and where am I? Lusaka. I should be back to the States this coming Friday, and I look forward to coming home. God bless you, everyone. Thank you again. I finally met you, as I said, my dear sister, in our extensive conversation, has literally put me in a chokehold. And she said, you're going to get General Gordon-Bray on. He is a profound person. So I fulfilled my responsibility in getting you on, and it was a pleasure. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Oliver. Thank you so much. And I look forward to part two, because there's so much deeper we can go. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Catherine, for filling in. His phone went out. So everyone, see you next week.
Thank you. Safe travels, sir.
Thank you so much, Reverend Oliver. Thank you.
General Gray for president.
That's right. That's
Yes,
right. That's
there we
right.
go.
General
There we
Gray
go.
for president. That's right. Hallelujah.
I'll campaign for you.
Thank
All
you.
right. All
You got
right.
Ohio
Thank you,
vote?
everyone.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Curtis,
Okay.
Pong, for being there too. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy holidays,
Very
Merry
deep. It's another
Christmas.
Happy
really deep
holidays,
Yeah.
discussion, man.
everyone.
Really
Blessings.
Safe
awesome.
trip home, Reverend Oliver.
Yeah, safe trip back. Super
Yeah.
handsome.
Yeah.
Thank you for everyone for your contributions.
Thank you, Nadia.